Hello, everyone. This is a Veterans History Project interview. My name is Victor A. Dixon, the genealogy librarian of the Schaumburg Township District Library in Schaumburg, Illinois. Today, I'm interviewing Sergeant Jeffrey Walsh, who served in South Korea and Kuwait. Today's date is February 22nd, 2025. Jeffrey Walsh, thank you for participating in the Veterans History Project, and thank you for your service. It is a privilege and an honor to conduct this interview with you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. My name is Jeffrey Walsh. I served in the military from 1990 to 2005, and I'm really pleased that you want to hear my story.
Okay. So let's start with some of your biography. In what year were you born and where?
I was born in Chicago. I was raised in the Chicago suburbs. Yes, I'm from Illinois.
Okay. And who were your parents?
My parents are Dennis and Patricia Walsh. My dad is just about to turn 90 next month.
Okay. And did you have any relatives that served in the military?
I did. I had a cousin who was an Army doctor in Vietnam. He also spent a number of years at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I used the VA recently, and he actually coached me through an operation.
Okay. And what schools did you attend growing up?
I grew up in Des Plaines, so I went to Maine West High School. I went to Iroquois Junior High, also in Des Plaines. Later on, I went to college at DePaul University, and most recently, Illinois State University.
Okay. So what influenced you to join the military?
The seeds were planted at an early age. My best friend during my junior high years was Juan Pelayo. Juan Pelayo, a friend of mine, he joined the military right out of high school. So as I was off to college and I was in the civilian world, I'm getting these letters from different military bases, and I'm reading his letters, and I started getting interested. So eventually I joined.
So how old were you when you joined the military?
I joined as an old man, age 27. So when I went off to basic training, I was, a little bit older than most of the recent enlistees.
So how did your family feel about you joining the military?
They eventually accepted it. They weren't happy at first. They didn't see why I wanted to join. But it took a number of years, really, and then they thought I made a good decision.
Okay. And so why did you choose the branch that you chose?
Sometimes I wonder that because, Army stands for Ain't Released Me Yet. My recruiter convinced me. It seemed like I came to a point in my life that that's what I wanted to do. So I joined the Army.
And what do you remember about the first time you arrived on base?
Well, it's interesting. I've been in service, either volunteer service or military service, most of my life. And Army, it's a total immersion experience. So it's a change of life. So when people approach me and they say, should I join the Army or Air Force, Marines, Navy? I said, well, you can't just dip your toes in the water. It's a change of life. So you either really want to do it or you don't. So at that time, at age 27, I really wanted to do it, yes.
Okay, now how would you describe boot camp?
Well, you're learning to be a soldier. You're making that transition from civilian to a soldier. You can't really look back. It's a total change from the moment you arrive. You learn how to shoot a weapon. You learn how to wear a uniform. You learn how you're learning a different language, literally, the military alphabet, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, etc. You're learning a new way of life. You're on a base away from not quite civilization, but you're separated from the civilian population, and you learn a new trade. So once you leave basic training, you go on to AIT, which is Advanced Individual Training. So in my case, my first time, I went off to become a radio man, a 31 Charlie.
Okay, so if someone was thinking about like a good exercise to do, because especially in the movies, they usually show them doing a lot of exercise and things like that. What would you say would be the absolute best exercise to do before joining the military?
Oh, well, that's interesting. There are a lot of, as I understand it, so next month I will have been out for 20 years. So I got out March 19th, 2005. So that's almost a generation ago. So it might be quite different now. But at 0600, every morning was physical training. So they usually featured different exercise every day, from jumping jacks to burpees. And then, we may go on a long run sometimes with a rucksack, or, that's a military backpack, or without. So is there a best exercise? I hadn't thought about that so much. We did so many of them, so to keep you in shape. So.
And we say long run, like how long would it sometimes be?
Oh, boy. Well, physical training usually lasts an hour, so it could be 3 to 5 miles, something like that.
Okay. And so what is your most vivid memory of your time training?
Oh, boy, there's lots of vivid times training. So, I was basically combat support and a non-combatant. That's what medics are, and I worked in a hospital, and I was a radio man. So just learning how to fire a weapon, I think, is quite a culture shock from a nice kid from the suburbs, And every MOS, which stands for Military Occupational Specialty, every job in the Army, no matter what you do, if you're a cook or a mechanic or an infantryman, you're learning to fire a weapon. And over the years, I fired all kinds of weapons. So I'm not a combat soldier, but as a medic, they would call you Doc. Hey, Doc, try this, and, I'd touch 2 wires together and a crater charge would go off, different things. I would fire a grenade launcher with paintball rounds in it. Hey, you want to try this, Doc? So Doc is a complimentary term. If they don't like you, they just call you medic. So I knew I was good to go when I heard the word Doc, and they thought it was funny. They were amused by me trying the weapons because they're the experts in it. So I was in infantry units and combat engineer units, so they knew how to do all that stuff. And so when they were done, I was like, hey, Doc, you want to try this, that, and the other? So it was interesting. So.
Now, you did quite a bit of writing, too, right?
Yeah, I was lucky. I was able to marry my writing skills with each post. So every post I was on, I was able to write for that newspaper. So it was like a dream come true. And then I don't know how this happened, but the gravitational pull of things, I kept getting stationed along Route 66. So I wrote a lot about Route 66 in different attractions. I was able to put a little travelogue book together. It was a big deal because enlisted people aren't supposed to be able to do those kind of things. It's supposed to be officers who do all the writing, and they're like, oh, this guy can write too.
Okay. Does a particular instructor stand out in your mind?
Oh, well, there's a couple of them. Sergeant Pumphrey, he was a Vietnam vet, so you get to hear all his stories. And he trained us in the pharmacy of all places. So, and then there was Sergeant Sarita. He was a ranger and an E7, which is a sergeant first class, when I was in South Korea along the DMZ. So those are a couple of them, sure.
Okay. And so just for those that might not be familiar, like regarding the E's, when you first joined the military, you're an E1, correct?
Not necessarily. So I had some college, so I was an E4. I started as a specialist. Sometimes they had it, and I don't know if it's true today, if you got a buddy to join, they may give you an extra rank. You become a E2 or E3. E3 is private first class, just for getting others in the military. So yeah, there's some ways to get a little bit of rank.
Okay. Now, did you have any time to do anything relaxing?
Well, I mean, I got lucky. Some people would say it wouldn't be lucky, but to me, I loved Route 66, so I traveled along Route 66. Matter of fact, before I got in the military, in 2005, I was doing one of my Route 66 trips, and I found a place. They sold me a square foot of Route 66. So I always tell friends and family, I'm jokingly, that if things don't work out, I'm going to go live on my square foot of land. So.
Now, to where did you travel when you first left the United States?
My first real time leaving the United States was when I got stationed in South Korea. So, I did little junkets, like back then, I think it was like 10 cents to go over the border to Mexico or something at the time, or maybe free, I can't remember, but that was, you were out of the country, but you were, continental North America and Mexico. So that was quite a culture shock in a fascinating way. So yeah, the military is already a culture shock, and then it's your first time really outside the country. So that was 98, 99.
Okay, and how did you travel to South Korea?
Oh, the military plane. So I think it's called Tower Air, and C-130s are more for like the folks who do the paratrooper stuff, jump out of planes. But your Tower Air is like, I used that for Kuwait too, I believe. It's like a chartered military plane, specifically for military personnel.
Okay. And about how many people were on the plane with you when you went?
Well, let's see. For Kuwait, there were 126. And I was one of two medics, and I was responsible for their physical and mental health. And then South Korea, that was a little different because I just graduated as a medic, medical specialist. 91 Bravo was called. So there was maybe just 10 of us, with others that I didn't know.
So when you first arrived in South Korea, what was your first reaction?
Well, we're lucky. So South Korea is our ally, obviously. Every platoon we were in, or every platoon I was in, or every platoon on base. I was at Camp Casey, about 10 miles south of the DMZ. Every platoon had what's called Katusa. So it was a South Korean national who was assigned to the military. And they were sort of like our diplomat, liaison. So if we had questions, we had someone to go to, which was kind of nice.
Okay. And so what was your unit, division, or battalion?
I'm going to hold up some things here. Second Infantry Division, and just by definition, so how it works with Army units, I can't speak for other branches, but doesn't matter what your job is, cook, mechanic, you kind of take on the personality of your unit. So I was an infantry unit, so I was going on some long road marches of 15, 18 miles with the company as the company medic or that kind of thing. So I was first of the 503rd Infantry, 2nd Infantry Division. So yeah, about 10 miles from the DMZ.
Okay. And by and large, what duties did you perform while you were in South Korea?
We were part of a medical platoon. So we, you know, you probably maybe heard the term from the movies, "Oh, Dark 30." All of a sudden, you get a call. You're at that time Specialist Walsh. You're going with Charlie Company. You're going to be their support. So as a medic, I would try to get things ready in advance. So, you know, you're in the dark, so I had my cargo pockets filled with IVs, 500 milliliter or 1,000 milliliter IVs, and then I'd have equipment taped to it. So maybe gloves, 18 gauge needles, and these kind of things, catheters and such. So, and this is a good one. When we were marching, I looked like the Hunchback of Notre Dame because you're familiar with that Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yeah.
So you have your regular, the regular troops have their, their rucksack, and then your medic has a first aid bag on top of the rucksack. So you have an extra, 10, 20 pounds maybe. Yeah. So you look a little bit like Hunchback of Notre Dame because you got all this stuff up there, Yeah.
So how did you stay in touch with family and friends while you were over there at that time?
Well, they say a generation is 28 years. So that's at least 28 years ago. That was, boy, I call it the pre-internet age, but back then we thought we didn't know any better. You think just kind of brainiac folks would know what the internet was. We didn't know at that time the World Wide Web was going to be a mainstream thing. So we were more comfortable. Your average soldier was more comfortable using the telephone, and the MWR, Morale, Welfare, and Recreation, or USO, maybe. I volunteered with the USO too. They may have, they have booths set up where you can make 30-minute phone calls, or they had computers where you could get online. But if it went down and your turn was up, well, that was it. And that happened sometimes, either on phone calls or, internet connections, because that was all new back then.
Yeah. And what friendships did you form while you were there?
Well, veterans form friendships, sometimes lifetime friendships. It's funny, I was at Dunkin' Donuts yesterday. I was talking to veterans. So anytime I see, not every time, but if I have time, I see someone wearing, U.S. Navy vet or Marine vet, or whatever. And I'll go up to them and, thank you for your service. And then I'll say, well, I'm an Army veteran. And then we usually end up talking for a while. And the truth is, I saw this saying recently, it's great. Veterans don't wear those hats to impress people. They wear those hats to find each other. So.
And what's something that you often do?
Well, this here, so we're talking about the hats. So if I wear this shirt, I wouldn't say it's a dog whistle, but you're going to get your average veteran laughing because it says DD 214 alumni. And the average person will like, what's that? Well, your DD 214 is the document that you get out your final day. of military service. So everybody remembers, and you need it for, you might need it for a job or just in general. So I got out twice because I was in the active duty and National Guard. So I was advised, and I went through with that advice, to go to the local courthouse outside. Like, for instance, Fort Sill was my last duty station. So in Lawton, Oklahoma, I went to the courthouse, got my DD-214 notarized. So if it ever got lost, it's there, so I can get extra copies.
Okay. Now, I've often heard that driving in other nations can be quite interesting. Did you have any interesting driving experiences?
Oh boy. That's Sergeant First Class Sarita I mentioned. He would have us driving in the mountains with no guardrails. And he was totally trusting of us, totally trusting. I guess he figured if I decided to turn the wheel left, he would go with me if we went over the pretty scary stuff, honestly. And then there was driving the Humvee with night vision. That stuff's kind of cool. You're doing maneuvers and stuff. Wearing they call them nods. I don't know what they call them now, but night vision goggles. So when I got out of the military, part of my transition, I taught English as a second language. And my girlfriend was from Minnesota in South Korea. And she was there teaching English as a second language. So I got the idea to do that in China when I got out. And in China, I just refused to drive. I looked at people, they drove there, like, nope, no can do. You guys are nice people and stuff, but no, I'm not getting behind the wheel, So anyway.
Okay, so it sounded like you had a good experience with meeting someone, but what did some other people do sometimes when they met someone, or did they have special spending habits?
Oh, yeah, well, you gotta think about the mentality of some of the young troops, I guess. I joined at 27, which was considered an old man, but you had kids that joined at 18, right out of high school from XYZ town. That might be their first time away from home anywhere, and then there they are overseas, and oh boy, they did some dumb stuff. I don't want to badmouth anybody, so I won't mention any names. But as medics, sometimes on payday weekends, we'd have to patch them up because their spending and drinking habits. Let's say, yeah. Now, sometimes we patch them up in the barracks informally, or there's what was called an urgent care clinic, and they would have to stop by.
So, like, how much money might someone spend?
I've seen so that I always tell people, if you're a veteran, you become like an Irish storyteller or something, because there's an endless supply of stories. So I remember when I was, so you had your basic training, then you had advanced individual training. So I was at Fort Gordon, Georgia, because I was I did radio man training too. And this one private, back then they had more like mail calls and pay calls, and I think that's the right term. So private would get his money. Where's all your money? Well, I went to the mall, and like, it was like some girl smiled at him at the mall, and he bought a, I guess the girl got a good commission that day or something. And yeah, they just, in some cases, never had that kind of money before, which it didn't seem like a lot of money, but to them it was. And then, yeah, they definitely should have been assigned financial counselors. I think. Yeah.
So someone might end up spending $500.
Yes.
On someone that's
yeah. Now the good part of that is, and that's the neat thing about the military. So people who had those bad spending habits, well, that means you're going to be eating a lot locally. In other words, you're going to be visiting your mess hall on base. Yeah. Get the free food there. Hope you like it. And they say Air Force food is a lot better than Army food. I don't know. I had not too many complaints with her, I guess.
Okay. Any interesting marriage stories?
Yeah, there's the Irish storyteller again. Was at Fort Riley, Kansas. One sergeant got cold feet, and we're all at the chapel. Where's Sergeant Tyler? You know, I can't remember. I think if the bride, I think the bride was up at the altar. And he got cold feet, but next day he got married, so he had a change of mind, heart, whatever. A private Moss Brooks in South Korea. One day comes up to me. I'm 27, I think. You know, he's 18. Looks like Doogie Howser, like 14 or something. I want you to be the best man. I'm like, best man of what? For my wedding. I'm like, wedding? You know, we had seen him with a girl, you know. So one day we went into the village, you know, and he pointed out somebody, and I'm like, that girl's, you know, at some sort of club or something, you know. And that girl's not even looking at you. Oh, no, she really likes me. And like, took us about a month to talk about it. So, before, yeah.
Okay, and so while you were in South Korea, what did you usually do for like recreation?
Well, for us it was rough. You know, South Korea is a hardship tour. The Korean War never formally ended. You know, the talks on the border are always open. There's two microphones. I've been to, you know, we went to the DMZ a number of times because we're nearby. And so you didn't do a lot of recreation there. If you got some sort of R&R or leave or 4-day pass or something, you'd probably try to head to Seoul. You know, that was more fun. So we actually went as a platoon once. Oh, a side note about recreation, though. You'll like this. So we were Camp Casey, but above us was Camp Boniface, which was actually on the DMZ. They made a joke recreation activity that became famous. It was in Sports Illustrated. The world's most dangerous golf course. So it was a par, and I'm not a golfer, though I'm golfer age, and I'm going to look like a golfer. Like par 3, 196 yards or something. But if you hit your ball too far, it went in North Korea, you couldn't get it back. So every Labor Day, and I don't know if the tradition still continues, as a joke, you need to wear, we call it full battle rattle, which means all your combat gear, your helmet, and your web gear, it's called, and your magazine, you know, and then you go around the little golf course. So that's some recreation for you.
Did you ever have anyone say they were going to go for a walk?
You know, the whole thing at the DMZ was sort of scary, you know. I heard the South Korean government had a reward if you could get you could see into North Korea, the North Korean flag and this and that. That wasn't anything to mess with, you know, I would say. You know.
Well, something with Schoolhouse Hill?
Oh, okay. So that was a special PT training exercise. What happens is you got these officers and sometimes sergeant majors, and they'll just say some magic words and you know you're in trouble. Like, we're just going to go on a little run today. Like, uh-oh. And so the one run that was particularly stressful was the Schoolhouse Hill run. So you would wear your flak jacket and you know, I don't know how many pounds on your back, and your combat boots. And my combat boots had alligator teeth at the bottom. I could talk about that if you want. And we'd run up a 45-degree angle, and on this little run, and you'd be pretty exhausted when you got back. That usually was within the hour of your regular PT too, but that particular day you're wearing all your gear and stuff. So
now you actually got to go to the 1996 Olympics for a while, correct?
I did. So I spent 10 years on active duty and nearly 5 in the Guard. During that time in the Guard, I was in Indiana, and I was with the unit in Terre Haute, Indiana. So it was a surprise to me. I got wind of, like, some people in Indiana are going down to Georgia for the 96 Olympics. I'm like, wow, I'd like to go. So I called up a unit, and they go, because I thought I was going to get turned down. They go, no, you got 15 more of you to go? I'm like, I don't know about that, but I'll go. So we pulled Guard duty. We stayed in Dunwoody, Georgia, which is a suburb of Atlanta. Every night and day, they tended to be long shifts. We pulled Guard duty at different venues during the Olympics. All in the Atlanta area. We didn't go to, there were events during the 96 Olympics in Memphis, Tennessee, and, et cetera, et cetera. But July 27th of that year, tragedy happened. Nobody knew it was going to happen. A bomb went off. I was within maybe 100 yards of that. So I saw, the cops on horseback, the sawhorses being put up, people running with blood on them, So I'm not officially a combat veteran, but that's pretty close. So I don't think about it much, other than when I see documentaries and stuff, and I'm like, oh, yeah, it was right there. And the weird thing was, I could have ended up even closer, but somebody wanted to take a break and do a little something on the way to our duty, and I would have even been closer to it. So, and I might have been right there, but I was close enough, sure.
Now, how did you feel when you were sent to Kuwait?
That was an honor. That meant to me, I was a good medic. You entrusted me to be one of 2 company medics. Matter of fact, I had to leave the theater so this was 2000, May to November 2000, and all of a sudden the company commander came up to me, because you're responsible for both physical and mental health. So, they said Private Haney has possibly tried to unalive himself. You're going to get on an airplane, you're going to be the NCO escort, and you're going to bring him to Landstuhl Hospital in Kaiserslautern, Germany. And then people are all jealous of me. Oh, you're going to Germany, So, a lot of soldiers get stationed in Germany. I never did, but I spent a week there, and I had to bring him to the so-called rubber room, and I had to check on him every day. And it was Kaiserslautern, which I guess is a big American area, and it was also, so there was Landstuhl Army Hospital, Rhine Main Air Force Base, and then it was right near the border of Luxembourg too.
What was probably the most bothersome thing about Kuwait?
That's a good one. Time for another story. So there you are. You're trying to keep soldiers alive and well and hydrated, and tell them to change their socks and keep their canteens full, and et cetera, et cetera. And then you got privates, and then soldiers, and then maybe some NCOs too, trying to catch scorpions and put them in a jar for fun. And they'd watch, like some sort of science fiction thing. They'd watch the scorpions battle at each other in the jar. I'm like, one of those gets out and starts stinging half the platoon, we're going to have a lot of work to do.
Now, when you returned to the United States, how did the other soldiers feel or react with that?
Yeah, that's another good story too. So I remember when I got my orders to go to Kansas, Fort Riley, Kansas, another stop on the Route 66 tour. People are like, "Oh, Kansas! Why would you want to go there? You're going to go see Auntie M and the Tornado and Wizard of Oz." There would be a lot of jokes, but it turned out that was one of the tighter units I was in. So yeah, most of them we were pretty close if you're soldiers and stuff. But we got back from Kuwait. It wasn't like a hero's welcome, but we all got along really good. We would, on weekends in Kansas, we go up to Kansas City or some sort of Indian casino or something. We'd all do things together. We all went as one group everywhere we went. So they were happy to have us back. So it's part of their little gang there.
Okay. And was there something that you did or received for good luck, good fortune?
Oh, well, this here. So kind of beat up. It's now 25 years old. So I don't know the chaplain's name, but when we had a chaplain with us in Kuwait, and he handed me a New Testament with the desert camouflage cover, as you can see, which is pretty beat up, and still have it today. Good luck charm, and it's a nice thing that I have.
So, what awards and promotions did you receive?
Well, like I said, I'm not a combat vet, so I got your standard ones. Your good conduct medal. One I'm kind of proud of. I got an Army Achievement Medal. I don't think I have it out here. But so my last 3 years I worked in a hospital, and I helped the hospital pass their annual inspection, which is called a JACO inspection, and I'm not sure what that stands for. I also helped write, like I said, I like to write 24-page healthcare guide for the hospital too. So I had to go around to different wards and clinics and interview civilian and military NCOICs. And NCOICs means the non-commissioned officer in charge. So the person running the clinic, basically, or ward. And so I got all those interviews, and I was able to put them in our healthcare guide. So at Fort Sill.
Okay, and so what are some of the medals that you have in front of you?
This one's kind of neat. So I got this recently. So I was using my GI Bill, and then I was in the Peace Corps, so there's educational benefits there. I was at a military appreciation football game, and a man, I don't know what his rank was and what branch of service, handed me what's called a challenge coin, and it's got all the branches on it. It's got Coast Guard, Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force. Occasionally when you go to military functions, they also might have Merchant Marine. So here's the coin. Can you see it?
Zooming in. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. This is an honor too. So a few of our American presidents served in the military. So you might know the story of John F. Kennedy. He was in PT 109 during World War II, and a Japanese destroyer cut his boat in half, and he physically swam, and the other sailors, I don't know if it was more than one, he had them on a rope, and he swam for miles, with them. Anyway, yeah, so I was interviewed about my both military and Peace Corps experience at this John F. Kennedy museum. So that's what this is here.
So what rank were you when you completed your military service?
I was just an E5. And what happens is when you take a new job, you do something that's called reclass. So I spent a lot of time at Fort Sam Houston, which is in Texas. It's a medical training facility. So I had to spend weeks and months learning to be a medic, which at the time was called a 91 Bravo. Now it's 68 Whiskey or something like that. So, yeah, times change. And then I went reclass. So, as a 91 Bravo, I was still a youngish man. And I go, I came to a point, I don't want to play out in the woods anymore. No, I'm done. And then, so I'm gonna work in a hospital. My mother spent 25 years in a hospital. She was an accountant in a hospital. And I thought, what? I could work in a hospital, and then maybe I could do that when I get out or something. So I had what's called reclass or get a new job, and I became a 91 Quebec. So I came back. I went back to Fort Sam Houston, and I spent a number of weeks and months there learning to be a pharmacy specialist. So then my last 3 years in the military, I worked at Fort Sill, Oklahoma's Rail Army Community Hospital. It was a high volume dispensary, let's call it, 10 windows. So hundreds of meds going out every day, a mix of civilian and military pharmacists and a mix of civilian and military pharmacy techs. So I was one of the military techs, pharmacy techs.
And you also reached the rank of sergeant.
Yeah, I was a NCO, and I find things that's when the rubber meets the road, they say. Here's my little rank there. I wore to Kuwait, E5. So yeah, I didn't make it up the ranks too much, but yeah, when you reclass, that's kind of what happens a little bit. But you get a lot of responsibility once you put on those stripes. So I was a barracks NCO for 3 years. So I lived right across from the hospital, and there were 100 soldiers in the barracks. And then many times, the senior NCOs would go home to their families, and Sergeant Walsh would have to close the pharmacy. So, yeah, you put on those stripes, you start adding responsibility.
Okay. So what would you say was the most difficult part about leaving the military?
I think it's always difficult. And, sometimes people joke about it. Did I ever really transition to the civilian world? It's tough because when I was growing up, let's say in high school, 1979, there were about 15 to 18% of Americans who are veterans. Now, there's only 6 out of 100. So that's 94 who aren't. So what does that mean? That means there's a lot of people who don't really understand, what it means to be a veteran. But it's, it is what it is, and people, they'll thank you for your service and stuff. So it's a good thing. But yeah, it's a never-ending transition, I would say, and you, depending on how long you stay in, you can miss certain stages of life, where your friends and family back home are, having their first child and getting married, et cetera, et cetera. You may do all the same things, but they won't happen on the same timeline.
Now, when you return, go ahead.
So, you remember COVID? That wasn't too long ago.
Yes.
Okay, so I was I was getting involved, you'd find things to do during COVID, Student Veterans of America chapter. Okay. And they had what was called, I think it was called NatCon. But anyway, it's their annual event, their annual conference. And the keynote speaker, and I'm like, how did they get these people? That year, 2021, was Dr. Jill Biden. And like a few months later, after attending, everything was on Zoom then. So there's, Dr. Biden talking to, her father was a veteran and her son, Beau Biden, was a veteran. We heard all this stuff. But the neat thing about this letter, nobody does anything alone. Military families go through a lot, just like a soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, Coast Guard personnel would, And she's part of a group called Joining Forces. So Michelle Obama, President Obama's wife and First Lady, and Dr. Jill Biden ran something called Joining Forces, which is still in existence to this day, and it assists veteran families, caregivers, and survivors. So they support the troops in many different ways.
Now, did you make use of the GI Bill?
I did, but I'm glad you brought that up because it's a sore subject for me because when my mother was ill, I took a part-time security guard job. I've talked to this man who was about to retire as a janitor, 30 years, 40 years, I don't know. And he goes, one thing I always regret is I never used my GI Bill. And there you go right there. The GI Bill should never expire. Your medical benefits don't expire. Why should the GI Bill expire? It doesn't make any sense to me. And I'll tell you how it doesn't make any sense. 2017, there was something passed called the Forever GI Bill. But the Forever was only for soldier, sailor, airmen, Marines, new veterans that got out after 2013. So all the veterans from 1944 to 2013, their GI Bills had expiration dates. So that man, he wanted to use his GI Bill, right, after retirement, maybe start a second career or something. No, couldn't do it because you can't grandfather clause into the new, 2017 is not that new now, but the newest incarnation of the GI Bill. It's sort of, to me, that's just my opinion, it's sort of unfair.
And did you make use of the United States Department of Veteran Affairs, also known as the VA?
Yeah, and at the start of when we started talking, so I mentioned my cousin Roger is an Army doctor. And so that was my first time using the VA. And it was a really positive experience. So I was surprised, because, you hear bad things about the VA in general, the wait times and the health care, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't have trouble. I felt blessed, lucky. So I live in central Illinois, and I used VA Bloomington, VA Danville, different clinics, and they had a system, and I think it's called Continuum of Care. I could be wrong there. But I was able to actually go to civilian hospitals and clinics too, and able to use that. They had a cooperative exchange or agreement or something, and I was in grad school at the time, and I had a big growth on me. I was trying to, it didn't hurt, so I thought it was benign, and it turned out to be benign. It was a hernia. So yeah, after I graduated, I had an operation, and like I mentioned earlier, my cousin helped me kind of coach me through that. So kind of nice.
Afterwards, you ended up joining the Peace Corps. What was that like?
Well, there are all kinds of forms of service. I've served in one way or another my whole life. I've been a member of the Peace Corps, the Rotary, AmeriCorps. They're all different, but they're all about service above self, helping other people. Maybe you remember. I mean, I'm old. I'm about to be 62, so maybe you remember in the 70s that the commercial for the Peace Corps, the toughest job you'll ever love. So I initially got turned down when I was 44, and then I went at kind of an advanced age 53 to 55. So I became an AARP kind of guy in South Africa. So I didn't see it coming. I got accepted 9 years later. The military tie-in was you're assigned a cohort. So my cohort had 37 members, and there's usually one or two per cohort who are former military. So anytime a former military person would come in the country, they'd send it my way. And I'd be, uh-oh. So the one day, a Marine who just got out of the Marine Corps shows up in my little village in Mapotsile, South Africa. I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And, what are we doing today? I'm like, we're hanging out. I had to get him to kind of decompress, and he wanted to do all that. And I asked him, you just got out of the Marine Corps? I go, yeah. So, yeah. There's, I don't know if I could bring up some of those jokes if you want. There's jokes among the different branches, and it's kind of like brothers and sisters. We can make fun of each other, but you can't. That's how I feel about it. So you want to hear some of those jokes. But anyway, so there he is. I was teaching 4th to 7th grade and life skills to a little school, in South Africa. He's like, what are we doing today? And, da, 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 and you're going to scare these kids, relax, So anyway.
Now, some people say they sometimes see more action in the Peace Corps than the military. Did you experience that?
I did, and I make jokes about that. It's funny but not funny, kind of gallows humor. I said, I have more combat experience in the Peace Corps than I do the military. So one day, April 23rd, 2018, I got a call, and you need to evacuate. We'll give you 30 minutes to get your stuff. So let me give you a little bit of backstory. It's post-apartheid era in South Africa, but there's still flare-ups and stuff. At that time, there was trouble with the president and the premier in our province. So there were strikes and protests all over the country, and for other reasons too. It was like the perfect storm of protests. There was one with universities, fee must fall, they wanted free college. There was medical protests against President Zuma, who was the president of the country at the time. And all I noticed is, I saw it on TV, it looked kind of scary. All I noticed is, hey, all that stuff is getting closer and closer to me. And so the one day I look out my window, oh, it's here, And so there were tires on fire and garbage cans burning and stuff, and some looting and stuff. So my principal at the school, they call in South Africa a pickup truck a bakkie, it's called, and we hopped in the bakkie, and then we literally got out of the province. I was in the Northwest province, which was like semi-arid near the Kalahari Desert, and then we went to the Northern Cape, and then my last 3 months of Peace Corps I spent in Pretoria working on the annual report, so 2017 annual report.
So what are you doing right now?
Right now, I work for 4-H and University of Illinois Extension. So I live in Central Illinois. 4-H and University of Illinois Extension are kind of associated traditionally with agricultural things, all things agricultural. But there are other areas, as I found out. So my first day on the job was at the McLean County Fair. And, I'm not a country boy. I'm a suburbanite born in the city. I grew up with Little League Baseball. And here we are at they say it's the largest 4-H county fair in the country. I haven't verified that yet, but it was a large venue. So, here's a city slicker at the country fair, and I'm at the ice cream booth, and I'm getting a zebra ice cream. It's chocolate vanilla, but dummy me doesn't realize it's like 98 degrees. So I'm trying to get back to my tent, my ice cream's melting, and everybody's laughing. Okay, but anyway, the neat thing is 4-H has changed over the years, and I now I've been at this job closing in on 2 years, so over a year and a half. So I'm learning about all things 4-H. I'm an apprentice beekeeper, for instance. Inside the tent at the fair, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. So they had over 150 exhibits over 2 days. Aerospace, fashion merchandising. I attended something the other day. There's 8-year-old kids making quilts, all kind of, all the above. Where I work at an after-school program for disadvantaged kids. And all kinds of 4-H activities there too.
And you do some things with Rotary, correct?
Yeah, Rotary. Matter of fact, tomorrow is World Rotary Day. So it's an honor to be in the Rotary. The story goes, boy, I have a lot of stories, and I'm not even sure. Maybe there's a part of my memory that's missing. So I wandered in. There's 6 Rotary groups, actually 7 in Bloomington Normal. That's quite a large number of Rotary groups. So I walked into one day, and they asked me, who's your sponsor? I pointed to an empty chair. So now I've been there a year, and now there's 130 people who would say, well, I'm a sponsor, in theory anyway. So what's neat about the Rotary, it's kind of the opposite of Peace Corps or Army. It's not total immersion. It's a lot of one-off things, but they add up over a while. You're at the Boys and Girls Club. You're painting the interior. You're painting, new rooms. You're at the Illinois State basketball game. You're running concessions. Our president sold wreaths, and some of the profits for that went to Habitat for Humanity, and on and on and on. And then I became a Paul Harris Fellow recently, So that kind of, what that means is I'm kind of accepted into the military. I'm sorry, into the Rotary. Oh, and there's military Rotarians, of course, too. So there's that. You go on Facebook and look that up and join that little group.
So what would be some of the messages that you would like to leave for future generations who will view or hear this interview?
Oh, yeah, I feel very strongly about service in general. I think everyone, younger generations, older generations, should do something that benefits others. It may not benefit your pocketbook, but it benefits your soul. So if I'm a young person, I wish everyone could do it, and maybe it's not possible. We don't live in a perfect world. Spend 2 years doing something bigger than themselves. Now that could be military service, Army, Navy, Peace Corps, Marines. Now we have the Space Force, one of those. Or 2 years of Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, Red Cross, Habitat for Humanity, something bigger than themselves.
Okay. Thank you for taking the time to share your recollections of your military service, and thank you for serving.
Thank you for the time, Mr. Dixon, and I appreciate this opportunity.
Welcome.